Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Oliver Twist as read by Lord Naren White. 30 or 40 years ago, before losses and chancery suits came upon it, it was a thriving place, but now it is a desolate island indeed. The houses have no owners. They are broken open and entered upon by those who have the courage, and there they live and there they die. They must have powerful motives for a secret residence, or be reduced to a destitute condition indeed, who seek a refuge in Jacob's Island. In an upper room of one of these houses, a detached window of fair size, ruinous in other respects, but strongly defended at door and window, of which house the back commanded the ditch in manner already described, there were assembled three men, who, regarding each other every now and then with looks expressive of perplexity and expectation, sat for some time in profound and gloomy silence. One of these was Toby Crackit, another Mr. Chitling, and the third a robber of 50 years, whose nose had been almost beaten in some old scuffle, and whose face bore a frightful scar, which might probably be traced to the same occasion. This man was a returned transport, and his name was Caggs. "I wish," said Toby, turning to Mr. Chitling, "that you had picked out some other crig when the two old ones got too warm, and had not come here, my fine fellow." "Why didn't you, blunderhead?" said Caggs. "Well, I thought you'd have been a little more glad to see me than this," replied Mr. Chitling, with a melancholy air. "Why, look'ee, young gentleman," said Toby, "when a man keeps himself so very exclusive, as I have done, and by that means has a snug house over his head, with nobody a-prying and smelling about it, it's rather a startling thing to have the honour of a visit from a young gentleman, however respectable and pleasant a person he may be to play cards with at conveniency, circumstanced as you are. Especially when the exclusive young man has got a friend stopping with him that's arrived sooner than was expected from foreign parts, and is too modest to want to be presented to the judges on his return," added Mr. Caggs. There was a short silence, after which Toby Crackit, seeming to abandon as hopeless any further effort to maintain his usual devil-may-care swagger, turned to Chitling and said, "When was Fagin took, then?" "Just at dinner time, 2 o'clock this afternoon. Charlie and I made our lucky up the wash-us chimney, and Bolter got into the empty water butt, head downwards, but his legs were so precious long they stuck out at the top, and so they took him too." "And Bet?" "Poor Bet! She went to see the body, to speak to who it was," replied Chitling, his countenance falling more and more, "and went off mad, screaming and raving, and beating her head against the boards. So they put a straight waistcoat on her, and took her to the hospital, and there she is." "What's come of young Bates?" demanded Caggs. "He hung about. Not to come over here afore dark, but he'll be here soon," replied Chitling. "There's nowhere else to go now, for the people at the Cripples are all in custody, at the bar of the Ken. I went up there, and I see it with my own eyes. It's filled with traps." "This is a smash," observed Toby, biting his lips. "There's more than one will go with this." "The sessions are on," said Caggs. "If they get the inquest over, and Bolter turns king's evidence, as of course he will, from what he said already, they can prove Fagin an accessory before the fact, and get the trial on Friday, and he'll swing in 6 days from this. You should have heard the people groan," said Chitling. The officers fought like devils, or they'd have torn him away. He was down once, but they made a ring round him and fought their way along. You should have seen how he looked about him, all muddy and bleeding, and clung to them as if they were his dearest friends. I can see him now, not able to stand upright with the pressing of the mob, and dragging him along amongst them. I can see the people jumping up, one behind another, and snarling with their teeth, and making at him. I can see the blood upon his hair and beard, and hear the cries with which the women worked themselves into the center of the crowd at the street corner, and swore they'd tear his heart out. The horror-stricken witness of this scene pressed his hands upon his ears, and with his eyes closed got up and paced violently to and fro, like one distracted. While he was thus engaged, and the two men sat by in silence with their eyes fixed upon the floor, a pattering noise was heard upon the stairs, and Sykes's dog bounded into the room. They ran to the window, downstairs, and into the street. The dog had jumped in an open window. He made no attempt to follow them, nor was his master to be seen. "What's the meaning of this?" said Toby when they had returned. "He can't be coming here. I hope not." "If he was coming here, he'd have come with the dog," said Kaggs, stooping down to examine the animal, who lay panting on the floor. "Here, give us some water for him. He has run himself faint." "He's drunk it up, all, every drop," said Chitling, after watching the dog some time in silence. "Covered with mud, lame, half-blind. But he must have come a long way." "Where can he have come from?" exclaimed Toby. "He's been to the other kens, of course, and finding them filled with strangers, come on here, when he's been a many time and often. But where can he have come from first? And comes he here alone without the other? He? None of them called the murderer by his old name. He can't have made away with himself. What do you think?" said Chitling. Toby shook his head. "If he had," said Kaggs, "the dog'd want to lead us away to where he did it. No, I think he's got out of the country, and left the dog behind. He must have given him the slip somehow, or he wouldn't be so easy." This solution, appearing the most probable one, was adopted as the right. The dog, creeping under a chair, coiled himself up to sleep, without more notice from anybody. It being now dark, the shutter was closed, and a candle lighted and placed upon the table. The terrible events of the last 2 days had made a deep impression on all three, increased by the danger and uncertainty of their own position. They drew their chairs closer together, starting at every sound. They spoke little, and that in whispers, and were as silent and awe-stricken as if the remains of the murdered woman lay in the next room. They had sat thus some time, when suddenly was heard a hurried knocking at the door below. "Young Bates," said Kaggs, looking angrily around to check the fear he felt himself. The knocking came again. No, it wasn't he. He never knocked like that. Crackit went to the window and, shaking all over, drew in his head. There was no need to tell them who it was. His pale face was enough. The dog, too, was alert in an instant, and ran whining to the door. "We must let him in," he said, taking up the candle. "Isn't there any help for it?" asked the other man in a hoarse voice. "None. He must come in." And we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.